Hello everyone, how you guys doing? Hopefully you guys are having a wonderful day, and today we're here with a video on whether or not base cards are dead in soccer. I'll be going through essentially the more notable base cards, I would say, more so the pre-modern and modern base cards, some stickers, some cards, mostly key players, since that's going to be, the type of players that were prevalent throughout this entire cycle of the hobby that we've been in. At this point, we've all basically heard the narrative that everyone's chasing numbers, everyone's chasing colors, so I want to see how they're doing. So with that said, let's go ahead and get on into it. We have the 2014 Messi Prism PSA 10 here, and I felt like it was a really good card to go ahead and choose for this because this is one of the cards of the boom. The Prism boom was quite the time if you were there for it. If you weren't, we'll go back and see it here in a second. So most of these graphs, I'd like to focus on the 6 months because, sort of the last 6 months has been the most stable time in soccer, which is crazy to think about because realistically the World Cup took place in that point, and you would have thought, going into it, that would have been a time of, moves in one way or another, but alas, seems to be one of the more steady times, at least for this card in particular. As you can tell, if we look more into the dates here, going into the World Cup, it was dropping a little bit, was holding at about 160, dropped to about 115, 110, and with the World Cup win since then has bumped up a little bit, but there are sales that indicate, some weakness, I would say, down here. Really just depends. This is a PSA 10 and is pop 2300. One thing I do want to point out here is that for this card, the pops have really slowed down. And this is something we've sort of seen across the board, but there will be other cards and stickers like that today that don't indicate that. So I think that this is important to look into if you're someone that wants to maybe buy one of these or is just, concerned or interested in the market in one way or another. So in December of last year, so about 5 months ago, there was 2,200. Now there is currently 2,300. So about 25 per month at that rate. Closer to 20 really. And then if we go back, just from August of 2021 to September, there was almost, there was even more than that pop growth in 1 month's time. So, the growth we've had in the last 5 months was equal to 1 month during more of the PSA backlog era. So that is something to note, right? Whenever these pops are ramping up 100 a month, 3 every day, a lot of the sales are going to keep cutting underneath each other. Maybe in this sort of scenario where they lessen up and, Messi wins a World Cup, they don't do as bad, right? Now, we're going to take a look at another one here where we have the Cristiano Ronaldo 2014 PSA 10. So this one, the last 6 months, has not been seen as kindly. In 6 months' time alone, it has dropped 53%, which is pretty notable, I would say, going from about 125 at the beginning to as low as 38, currently 58, so a pretty substantial dip. Obviously, with if we back up to a year, you'll even see a bigger dip from 235 to 58. If we go 2 years, you'll see an even bigger dip from 900 to 58. Now, that obviously is crazy, and part of this is that, it's a pop 1700, just like Messi's a pop 2000. These are really high pop for soccer, right? People have debates on whether or not rookie cards with 100, 200 pop are, really that rare. So when you have something with 16, 1700, maybe 2000 pop, that's going to obviously fare a lot worse. So yeah, here is the Prism boom and bust. If you weren't aware, basically, this is a card that was in a PSA 10 worth like 16 bucks in 2016, 2017. 2018, it's worth still about the same. 2020, it goes all the way to a few thousand and then abruptly drops back down. Then whenever the real boom of cards really hits, it comes back up a bit more. But as you can see, it can't go as high as it did before because there's a lot more pop, a lot more of these submitted. And over time, people keep submitting them. They keep going down. And people eventually realize this really isn't all that great of a card. There was a point in time where, I saw an influencer pumping it and he was buying them raw for like 20 bucks a piece way back here, and I was like, that's just silly. It really doesn't make any sense. I don't know why anyone would like this card. Next thing you know, it goes to some extraordinary highs and followed by, I don't know, you would probably say extraordinary lows considering where it was at, but in reality, it's really not that crazy. And to be honest, I like to see it because it really doesn't make sense why this card should have ever been worth thousands, especially, where we're at in this market, right? This was worth at one point $1,000. Right now, you can get a Ronaldo rookie sticker in mid-grade for about $1,000. And those are going to be like pop 30, 40, 50 maybe. This is pop 1700 in this grade. It really never made any sense, and even when you add it up and do all the market cap stuff, it still probably is about equal to those, you know, mid-grade rookie stickers, I would say. But point being, it did have to go down, and certainly took its time, but it got there. Over the last 6 months, though, still no mercy, really. I mean, this is going down a good bit, and I would imagine a large part of that is Ronaldo's still seen as one of those active players, because obviously he is. So his card prices at least bake in that stuff is still happening. So when stuff happens, you know, there's going to be a reaction in it, and I think that that's a good example. We also have the Mbappe 2018 rookie Prism. This was a big one. Basically, the rookie for Mbappe popped 3,800, which again, in soccer is ridiculous, right? I don't know how much I can say it, but like the biggest pop in vintage soccer is like Maradona Calciatore at 300. And people there debate, you know, is that too many? How many are out there? Da-da-da. Like, this is pop 3,800 for a third-year Mbappe. But over the last 6 months, it does say 27% decrease. I guess, you know, sort of aided by the World Cup performance, it did pop off a little bit. I think World Cup Prism in general popped off just by having the Prism set out and released and sort of in the limelight for everyone to see. So overall, yeah, not great, but at the same point, you know, when we look at something like Ronaldo, also not bad. If we look at the long graph, it's going to be a lot of the same, right? A lot of the soccer cards, especially Prism, sort of go on the same graphs. The Topps Chrome Mbappe actually has stayed relatively even, if not shown slight signs of increasing until somewhat recent, where, you know, I guess PSG and Mbappe together aren't really looking all that hot. Maybe he gets a transfer out of there, but at this point, the Mbappe market, at least in my opinion, seems to just be waiting. I mean, they are eagerly awaiting some sort of move out of France, and if that does not happen, I don't think that that's going to be seen kindly within his cards. This was a fun one and a big sticker at one point if you were following. This actually in the last 6 months is up 84% in a 10. Now, to be fair, the other grades are a bit different. A 9 is currently down 10%, and an 8 is currently also down 10%. Also, these sales for the 10 are kind of all over the place, really, so it's hard to gauge. But generally speaking, you know, even to, if not, maybe performing a little better than even. This is one of the examples where I wanted to point out that, you know, there are going to be more of this, right? For something like 2014 Prism, most of the cards are released within the US. A lot of them, you know, weren't really that widely distributed, so the people that had them probably knew they had them and knew how to grade, and so they can get all that done relatively quickly, right? For something like this sticker, this is all over the world, and so, you know, it's still going to go up pretty heavily over time. I know my head's in the way here, but just trust me, if we look back here, this was getting graded not terribly, you know, about 10 a month in a PSA 9, maybe 20 every now and then. It looks like it tails off, but that's because it goes by a week-by-week basis. Realistically here, this is saying that about 30 have been graded in a little over a month, which is still a good amount. Not to say I'm a huge fan of the 2014 Prism by any means, but I'm just saying that, you know, there are differences in terms of how quickly things are going to get graded and when we'll see a true sense of pop reports for different things. I mean, it really just depends, and you have to sort of keep your pulse on that. From there, I want to take a look at the World Cup cards, because this is also something that had it really had its day at one point and is doing pretty good lately, actually. So this is in a PSA 9, up 10% over the last 6 months. As you can tell, during the World Cup and kind of going into it was actually really low, 350 to 400, and now it's basically popped up to 600, which is almost 50% bump from where it was at the low. PSA 10, this is actually down 10% in that same time frame, but realistically still holding a very high price point at 4 to 5 to 6,000 at times, compared to a 9 going for, you know, 4 to 5 to 600 at times. So a massive premium being placed there. To be fair, I guess this is pop 354, PSA 10's pop 98, so there is a huge delineation there. But of course, this is Messi, right? And Messi won a World Cup, and so these cards are going to be looked upon more favorably than prior to the World Cup. So realistically, he won a World Cup and you're only up, you know, 10%, maybe down 10%, which realistically probably isn't what people were looking for here. Over the longer time frame, as you can tell, this peaked at 20K, which is pretty substantial. PSA 9 peaked at 2-ish K, so again, you know, pretty precipitous drop from where it was initially. But if we're looking more on a lesser time scale, more of a modern time scale, really not too bad in terms of this card in particular. The Ronaldo did want to take a peek at this, so this is down 42%. Realistically, I mean, from the start of the World Cup, this is actually kind of up at times, and maybe if not even. So that's sort of interesting to see that even after the World Cup, not that, realistically Ronaldo buyers were probably expecting a World Cup, but just to say it didn't happen, and even after that, with him being in Saudi and no World Cup, still does pretty well, which, to be fair, I would have thought there was more of a drop to this, but at a certain point when stuff's dropped so far, will it drop more? You never really know. So to end this off, we'll take a look at a couple modern stickers and sort of see how they've done. I'm looking at all time for Erling Haaland, but we'll look at 6 months just to start. Here, this is down 24%. However, if you look from, I guess, sort of the pre-World Cup prices right here, it's actually, up to even a little bit, so that's not too bad, I would say. Only down 4%, which isn't too bad. One thing to note, it did bottom at sort of 150, so maybe from there you could say it's up almost 60%. Being up 60% from the bottom would sort of make sense given the season that Haaland's had, it'd sort of justify it. At the same time, to be fair, he got the transfer to Man City, but Man City really isn't that much of a huge fan base in cards. They do exist, obviously, but they're not, like a Real Madrid, where I see people from, I guess Madrid fans that are already preemptively buying tons of Mbappe, right? That's how crazy they are, while compared to, Haaland, he obviously didn't see a massive run-up because he moved to Man City. It was also sort of baked in that he was going to move, but where to, that was always the question. So over 1 year, only down 4% and up 60% from the bottom seems to be pretty good, I would say. Now, all time, obviously, there's going to be this, this dip, but this is a pop 1240 again. That's a pretty high pop for soccer. In modern, it's not terrible. There's obviously ones that are way worse, but it's not great at the same time, especially with Haaland. He has a lot of choices for rookies. That's sort of the thing with him and many others post 2019. But overall, nothing too crazy there. If you look at the PSA 10s, actually, though, that's up 50% from a year ago, which is pretty crazy. To be fair, we got kind of a lucky price point there. If it would have picked from up here, that would have been about even. So it really depends on where you choose to go from. But I mean, even from the bottom down there, 619. Someone almost doubled their money at this point and could have even gotten a little bit more whenever he was going off in October. So that's pretty impressive, I would say, for a modern sticker. I mean, people tend to really just dismiss modern stickers. And personally, I'm not that much of a fan of it, but I also do understand, like, $1,200 for a modern sticker is kind of a lot, right? So, you really have to balance that out however you may. In terms of pop report increases, I would be interested in that. Really not too crazy, as you can tell early on. There was sort of a high ramping of production, or I guess, PSA submissions going on back then. Recently, these are week by week, so it's harder to tell. Still a decent amount coming in, I would say. From February to March, we had about 25-ish, maybe 30, and we've had about the same in the following month. So it's still being submitted, I would say, in decent quantity. Modern stickers, again, aren't going to be anything too crazy in terms of rarity. The other modern sticker I would say that everyone should be thinking of would be the Kylian Mbappe rookie. This one over the last year in PSA 9, or actually last 6 months, is down 22%. We looked over the last year, almost 60%, which is pretty brutal. PSA 10, does that save this at all? We will see. 6 months, it does not, down 33%, and also last year, down 53%. So, I mean, really, I guess what we're sort of seeing in this base card discussion is, guess what? Messi, doing great. Well, not doing great, but doing pretty good, right? His stuff is holding up, if not doing a little better. Haaland stuff, holding up, if not doing a little better. But if you're on the other side of that coin, say you're an Mbappe, where you haven't been doing too much this year, you really don't have that much optimism for you as a player, as a collectible, it hasn't been great. Same thing with Ronaldo, right? You go out of the spotlight, you're in a new league that no one really pays attention to, you're sort of at this point retired. You have, I guess, a respectable drop then in price as well. And, this seems to make sense. I mean, at this point, not everything's going up, not everything's going down like at one point. I mean, that's sort of the redundant part of looking at these graphs, is you always see the same thing, right? You see, wow, that first year, crazy growth. Wow, that second year, crazy growth. And then you see, wow, crazy drop. And then you see, like, pretty decent drop, right? And so you see that all the time. Basically, for this whole time span, nothing really mattered, right? Like, nothing mattered in terms of fundamentals weren't that important. What's actually going on, obviously it mattered, but it wasn't majorly important. Right now, that's all sort of changed. Things actually matter, which is crazy and fun to think about. And personally, I think a bit more exciting to go ahead and, have as a market going forward. I think that just generally across the board, it doesn't seem to me like base cards are, still in the gutter as if they're just constantly being sold off hand over fist. They're holding up decently well on a shorter time frame. generally speaking. But if you have a player that does something, you know, maybe he bumps up from, say, 380 to 570. If you have a player that doesn't do anything and is, you know, looking a little worse, maybe he goes down from 7,500 to 3,500. I mean, and maybe you buy at the right time or the wrong time. It's just sort of the way things should be, it seems. We're getting back to a more normal reality. And to me, that's a bit more fun. If you want to see more videos like this, as soon as I go live, make sure to subscribe. Spoiler, I'll be doing another video like this going forward for gold cards, because I feel like that's also going to be a fun one to look at, since that sort of took on its own narrative. And we can do this for other types of, you know, narratives within the hobby as well. If you have any narratives you want me to check out and maybe share, let me know. Would love to hear it. And if you want to see more videos like this, as soon as I go live, make sure to subscribe. But with that said, hopefully you have a wonderful day, and peace.